Hey Marvin, how are you doing today?
Hey, great, Cody. How are you?
I'm doing excellent. So I am
Awesome.
really excited to be here with you and have you be the business showcase. And this is only given to people who have just been great supporters and have continued to just help grow Freedom One, the networking group that you're a part of. You've done everything from the ultimate resource, continue to connect new people with the group, and give referrals, etc. So thank you for doing all of those things. And we hope that you have continued to benefit from that group as well. So I'd love to just share, if you could share just a brief background and summary of who you are and what your background is. And then I want to get into some of the core leadership principles that you live by.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks very much, Cody, and kudos to you, Trinell, Rock, for the work that you all do every week in adding value to businesses throughout the Lake County area. The Freedom One networking event is a phenomenal opportunity for local businesses, and if you've not joined and become a part of it, I would recommend that you do so. So just a little bit about my background. I have been in business, in corporate business, for about 30 years. I've worked for major organizations like EDS, Electronic Data Systems, which was the organization that Ross Perot started, based in Dallas and Plano, Texas. I've worked for Abbott Laboratories, and I've worked for AbbVie, large corporate organizations, and have done a lot of diverse work around HR and recruiting, training, development, government affairs, and leading also organizational change within those organizations. One of the probably great assignments that I had was to be a loan executive from a company and to go to work for a nonprofit, actually start up a nonprofit, which was designed to increase minorities in the field of engineering. And so I was paid by my company, but they loaned me out to lead this effort. And it was a national effort to work with colleges and universities and ensure that the pipeline for minorities going into STEM fields was widened. And it was actually through that process that I got to know and become familiar with Abbott, and then ultimately went to work for Abbott. So in addition to all of that work secularly, I've also been involved in ministry, and I've been an international speaker. I've spoken to hundreds of thousands of people. Europe, Asia, Africa, Middle East, Caribbean, Canada, throughout North America. And so I've been really fortunate, really blessed to have these kinds of opportunities. And so after leaving the corporate space, really began to try to figure out what was next, kind of in my next halftime, and determined that adding value to people through speaking, training, and coaching was the path I wanted to pursue. Connected with John Maxwell, and am an executive director with the John Maxwell team. So really happy to be a part of that team as well as our session here today.
That's awesome. So Marvin, it's led you to be strong about leadership and going that path. Who has been an influential leader in your life that stands out?
Yeah, I've had several people of influence in my life. And probably the first person would be my mother, who, because of her personal leadership and her leadership in my family, really created the architecture for me to grow and to be successful. So I would say that my mother would be the first. The second would probably be my pastor, my early pastor growing up, who played a very influential role in grounding me with a spiritual perspective. I would say third would be a lady that I worked for at EDS, who was a very, very giving, accepting manager who allowed me to grow under her tutelage. I would say that the next person who was a major influence was the former head of government affairs at Abbott, who really trained me up in the areas of policy and government affairs. And then perhaps last would be John Maxwell, whose writings, whose teachings, and whose mentorship through this effort have really indelibly impacted my life. So I think I've given you about 5 people of influence in my life there, and each one in their own unique way have added value to me.
Yeah, that's awesome. It sounds like you've been very blessed through your journey in life, which is really cool. I appreciate you sharing that. It just shows that leaders can come from a lot of different places, right? It's not just the people that might be idolized or put on TV, but really it's the people that can be closest to us that can have a huge impact.
Yeah.
If you were, right, so we're talking to a group of people, and I know you've read a lot of John Maxwell's books, one of them on your list of most influential people. What's a leadership principle you could share, maybe that you live your life by, that you could share with others that you think would be impactful to them?
I think one of the greatest leadership principles is this foundational one. You've alluded to it already in terms of influence. It is the principle that says leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Leadership is not title, rank, or position, but it is influence. How do you gain influence? By adding value to people. So as I think about that principle, leadership is influence. You gain influence by intentionally adding value to people. That's where I try to live my life. And actually, as I work with people in individual coaching or in group sessions, that's where I'm trying to help facilitate their growth, to recognize what real leadership is. I had a coaching session today with a leader in which this leader had, I think, primarily began to look at her influence or her leadership within the small confines of her own organization, her own stovepipe. But through that conversation, we're able to see a broader swath of people that she could influence. And ultimately, growing as a leader is what she wants to do. And through this simple conversation, she was able to see that. So that's a major principle for me. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. And you gain influence by adding value to others intentionally.
Wow, that's powerful, powerful stuff, and so true. And I mean, you could look right back in history of a lot of leaders, right, that had a lot of influence, both that used it in good ways, but also in bad ways.
Absolutely.
So, right, that probably ties into a whole longer topic that we don't have time to get into today about values and all that stuff. But I really appreciate you sharing that with us, as that is a very powerful core principle. And last question for you here, Marvin, I got to ask, right? So you said John Maxwell's written over 100 books. What is your favorite book of his that he has written?
I think there's a couple of books that are really, really impactful. One is Developing the Leader Within You. That is a phenomenal work, and it's actually the second version. He wrote that book 25 years ago and then rewrote it and discarded 80% of the previous content. So the version 2, Developing the Leader Within You, is perhaps one of the greatest books because it is a combination of both leadership and personal growth that tells you how to grow as a leader. Now, there's a companion to that, and that would be the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. So those 2 works, if you don't read any of the other 98 books of John Maxwell, read those 2. Developing the Leader Within You, part number 2, and the 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership. And if those strike your fancy and you say, I got to have more, here's one more for you. No more, just going to give you one more. And that one is the 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. Those 3 books, if you're interested at all in learning and growing personally and in leadership, they will knock your socks off and give you an incredible framework to grow. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you, Marvin. That's awesome. I love to read, and I'm going to make sure I dive into those. I've actually read the first 2 you mentioned, so and that is actually because I've been exposed to you. So thank you very much for turning me on to those. I really appreciate it. It's been awesome talking to you here today, Marvin. Thank you so much for being with us.
Hey, my pleasure, Cody. Have a great day.